News. Joining us now, the Republican Senator James Risch of Idaho. He's a member of both the Intelligence and Foreign Relations Committees. Senator, what are you learning about North Korea's claim that they've actually tested a hydrogen bomb?
Well, that's highly unlikely. This is their fourth test, as you know, and the yield from all the seismic materials that have been reviewed indicate that it's about the same as what the previous tests were. There's no possible way it could be a hydrogen bomb under those under that scenario. So it's just highly unlikely at this point that they did do that test.
Did the U.S. have any advance intelligence warning that this test was about to take place?
You know, Wolf, without going into details, I can tell you that this was no surprise to the intelligence community. In a general sense, we know that every year, 2 years, 3, sometimes 4 years, the North Koreans do something. They push the envelope and make a statement. They were way overdue, so this did not come as a surprise, really, to those in the intelligence community, or for that matter, to military people or anyone else who follows these things.
What can the U.S. do about this potential threat, a nuclear North Korea? More economic sanctions clearly on the table. They haven't done much, at least so far.
Wolf, you know, they're already so heavily sanctioned, it's really hard to turn the screw much tighter. But there are some things. I think that what's going to happen is there are going to be some banking sanctions that they can turn the screw a little tighter on with some of the banks that they're doing business with in Asia. I have no doubt that that's going to be looked at. You know, the most troubling thing about all this is the admission by the Chinese that they didn't have advance notice of this. I mean, Kim Moon-jung's father was much closer with the Chinese than this young man is, and frankly, nobody knows how his mind works, but distancing himself from about the only friend they have on the planet, and it isn't a very warm relationship at that, is not a very smart move for anybody, and that looks like what's happening. But what that tells you is the rogueness, the disconnect, how they are just apart from the rest of the world. And as was said in one of the earlier segments, if anybody can control them, it's the Chinese, where they provide as much food and aid as they do. And if this is separating, it's troubling. It really is.
The Iranian President Hassan Rouhani tweeted this morning, and I'll read it to you, Senator, which country is exacerbating Sunni-Shia divide, bombing Yemen, and undermining governments in Iraq and Syria by providing funds and arms to ISIS? He's obviously accusing Saudi Arabia, his rival, of that. But here's the question. How could what's happening in North Korea now affect the Middle East, specifically that U.S.-brokered international nuclear deal with Iran?
Well, I think it may be the reverse of that, actually. I think the North Koreans are emboldened by how Iran has acted over the last 18 months or so, where they negotiated this agreement. The ink wasn't even dry on the agreement, and they were violating the resolutions that the UN had put out about testing ICBMs and that sort of thing. And so they're, you know, they look and see that that Iran not only is not having any difficulties as a result of it, it's actually having sanctions lifted. So I think the message they're getting is that the world is weak, and the stronger they show themselves, the better they're going to be treated. And of course, nothing's further from the truth, at least in the minds of most of us.
Senator Risch, stand by. We have more to discuss. We're following two major breaking stories, including North Korea claiming it has successfully tested a hydrogen bomb, and Donald Trump reacting tonight, ruling out a preemptive strike against North Korea, saying that China should handle the nuclear threat from its neighbor. We're talking about all of that, much more in our one-on-one interview with Donald Trump. That's coming up shortly. Stand by for that. In the meantime, I want to get back to Republican Senator James Risch of Idaho. He's a member of the Intelligence and Foreign Relations Committees. Senator, let me get your take on the escalating conflict right now between Saudi Arabia and Iran. How do you think the U.S. needs to be working to try to ease or resolve this situation, which is potentially explosive?
Well, Wolf, it is potentially explosive, and the difficulty is that this has been simmering for a long time, and it keeps getting worse and worse. And the situation in Yemen, where the two countries are fighting a proxy war, in essence, in Yemen, really isn't helping. The action by the Saudis, where they executed the 47 people, including I believe there were 3 that were Shiite that were in that group, including one very prominent cleric, certainly is going to raise the stakes. We've seen already what's happened. Iran broke diplomatic relations, and of course, then that was followed by a number of the Sunni countries, the UAE and Qatar and others, that then cut ties with Iran. It is not a good situation. There's no question about it, and Iran can be a very unpredictable country, and it's cause for concern. There's no question about it. As you know and has been reported, there have been a lot of discussions between the U.S., between the State Department and the Saudis regarding what's going on, and everyone attempting to try to get people to ratchet back.
Yeah, the Saudis severed diplomatic relations with Iran after Iranians stormed the Saudi embassy and burnt it, ransacked it in Tehran, and other Sunni Arab states, as you point out, UAE, Sudan, Kuwait, Qatar, they've now followed suit, and it's a serious problem. How does this affect the larger U.S. war against ISIS?
Well, you know, that's always unpredictable, because it's so hard to understand the relationship between Shia and the Sunnis. And the Iranians, of course, want to be the leader of the Islamic world, and particularly the Shia world. And in that regard, ISIS is a competitor for them. They don't like that, particularly, that ISIS has gained as quickly as it has and as much as it has. ISIS, of course, their main one of the main claims they've had to be able to rise is the fact that they were trying to establish a caliphate where it will be Islamic land in an Islamic country. Iranians, of course, they claim they already have that. But in any event, this rub between the Sunnis and the Shia has been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years, and it's difficult to get your head around.
Certainly is. Senator Risch, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you. Well, glad to be with you.
Thank you. Just ahead, Donald Trump stirring up a new so-called birther controversy, this time questioning whether his rival Ted Cruz is really a natural-born citizen.
Because without China,
the critics are saying you're doing to Ted Cruz what you tried to do to President Obama, where he was born, his birth certificate.
Who knows about Obama?
His mother was a U.S. citizen born in Kansas.
You know,
was he a natural-born citizen?
Who knows? Who knows? Who cares right now? We're talking about something else, okay? I mean, I have my own theory on Obama. Someday I'll write a book. I'll do another book. It'll do very successfully.